problem with giving sermons titles is that you got to make the title early enough that it goes in the bulletin and in the all-church email. And by the time you actually come up with the sermon, you think, well, that's a crummy title. Well, what are you going to do? I had thought initially that I was really going to go in this direction of laboring for peace. And not that that is an unworthy direction. That's a terribly worthy direction. But it's also an overwhelming direction. When you see violence and non-peace on such a meta scale, it can be overwhelming. How on earth is little old me or our little old us's going to labor in ways that even put a dent in the world's need for peace? So as I was reading through not only this passage from Hebrews, but just all of Hebrews in general, I thought maybe I would strike a closer to home theme, the place that maybe we could start, where in what ways that we're able, we can make the world a more peaceful place. But it's got to be more like a butterfly effect, where there's just a little something that happens first, and it grows, so that we aren't so overwhelmed and wondering, what on earth am I supposed to do? Does that make sense? So this theme of discipline comes up all throughout Hebrews. When I initially had my gallbladder out, I was told, you can pretty much eat anything you want. It'll be okay. And for quite a while, that was true. I actually functioned pretty well initially. But the older I get, the more I realize that I am less and less tolerant of fat. It does not digest well. So I've taken to, like Thanksgiving dinner, which is like slathered in fat, right? I'll take a little enzyme afterwards, and that seems to do well. But the other day, we had coney dogs at home, chili dogs, and that was all right. I could have just taken my enzyme. But then Jen declared, after a lot of militant dieting on her part, that this was the night that we were all supposed to go to Dairy Queen. So not only did I have my chili dogs with chili sauce and fatty meat sticks, but then I had a big old blizzard too. And it was not good. And I realized why I needed to be more disciplined. But now this pales in comparison to the discipline that a lot of people have to exercise. Jen, for instance, when we discovered that she was diabetic, has ever since been almost militant in her discipline in terms of her diet. And now her numbers are awesome, and if they're anything less than awesome, she's mad at herself. And the person that she is on the telenutritionist that talks to her every once in a while has to talk her down. You're doing okay. These numbers are actually pretty good. You could allow yourself the occasional extra carb. She is like super disciplined, and it's worked. And there are many of you I know who on one level or another have to deal with that same thing. And for different people, there's different levels of difficulty, and bodies respond and don't respond in different ways. For our oldest son, James, he had gotten into the bad habit of going out for lunch every day at work and getting some kind of fast food thing. And fast food is not only terrible for you, but fast food in American portions is especially bad for you. And he was beginning to feel it, and we were beginning to see it. And it finally got bad enough in his feeling of it that he decided he needed to muster a little of his mother's discipline, and I'm happy to report he's been doing very well. He makes his own lunch right after dinner and puts it in the refrigerator so he can take it to work with him. He's very conscious about eating balanced stuff at dinner, not shunning. He's been trying a lot of things that he hadn't tried before and finding he likes them, which means there's other stuff that gets served that I like, which is good. And he's even bought himself a set of weights, and he has a little workout routine that he does upstairs in his room. So he's been doing well. But those of you who do any level of exercising or training, you know that it takes a certain amount of discipline. And there are times when that is better than others. There are those of you who deal with gluten allergies. There are those of you who are diabetic. There are those of you with all sorts of other health issues or just health desires for looking, feeling better. You do lots of stuff. It requires perseverance and persistence. But there are other things beyond. Boy, this is really doing weird stuff again. Doggone it. You know what? I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to talk into this and let this do whatever it's going to do. You know what? I didn't even have that one on, did I? Because now I'm really loud. Is that better or worse? Do you like really loud? There are some of you who are saying yes and some of you who are saying no. It's just like the thermostat. I'll compromise. I'll talk extra well into this. How's that? Kind of middle ground. Early in ministry, and is Janine here this morning? Because Janine probably remembers, I'm sure Bruce had one of these. Cokesbury used to put out this little bitty pocket calendar that was just right for those of us male clergy who don't carry purses and need something very small that would go in your back pocket. And I lived by my little Cokesbury pocket calendar. As soon as anything was there, I would get it out and I'd scrawl in my little Cokesbury calendar. At one point, I was in a study and somebody asked me about doing something and I wrote it in the calendar and they said, "Do you just live your whole life out of that calendar? You really need to learn how to be more spontaneous." So I flipped to a random page and I wrote 2:30, be spontaneous. And they thought that was kind of hilarious. And now, of course, I don't need my little Cokesbury pocket calendar. I have my phone. And I need my phone. My phone is like having my wife in my pocket. It buzzes at me a half an hour before I'm supposed to do something, or an hour if it's someplace to which I am driving, or 10 minutes if it's just somebody showing up in the office, right? And if this were to die, my life would be over. Calendaring is in and of itself a discipline, isn't it? Making sure that you kind of plan out things as best you can. And because Jen is old school and refuses to use the calendar on the phone, I have to do double duty. So I have it in my phone, and then I have to sit down at the beginning of the month and get the big wall calendar down and put it on the table and handwrite everything on the calendar so that she sees it. And every once in a while, if I forget to put something on the wall calendar, then I'm left saying, well, I just forgot to put it on the wall calendar, but not going to be here tonight. Or I just call whoever's on the wall calendar and say, Jen's already fixed dinner. Can we do this some other time? Jen is super organized. We are well paired. I needed a process person in my life. From very early on, when all the kids were little, and she still does it even though there are only 3 of us still home, she makes a menu. Used to do it by the month. She would have the whole month planned out. Now I've slackened her down a little bit. She's down to a week-by-week basis. I have had some ameliorating influence on that. But it plans that all our meals are balanced. It guides her shopping. And of course, it would always answer the kids' question, what's for dinner? Go look on the fridge. How have you had to discipline yourself in terms of calendaring or scheduling or planning? For those of you who are retired, maybe it's not nearly that big a deal. Or I've talked to several retired people who say, I don't remember ever being this busy when I was working. How on earth did I work? John Anderson at a previous church, when he first retired, he would say to me, thank God for Sunday, it's the only way I know what day of the week it is. What other material disciplines do we have? Well, individuals and couples often have, or should have, certain processes figured out for their finances, right? And every person, every couple kind of has their own system. Sometimes it gets worked out over years who ends up taking on which tasks of budgeting or tracking or paying bills. Or maybe you all have a cleaning schedule of sorts. Jen and I are only disciplined on the first level of cleaning stuff. The kitchen stays clean after cooking, the stuff stays straight, but a lot of the other stuff is just sort of as needed. There are folks I know that have this is the day that I dust and this is the day that I vacuum, or some people vacuum every day. I don't know how on earth you do it and not have your carpet just fall apart, but others are more disciplined than we are in that regard. When I was working on my doctorate, I had to be disciplined in budgeting my time, which turned out to be pretty easy for coursework, which was all very structured. But when it came to my big writing project, it was a whole other ball of wax, figuring out exactly, so I started trying to do the little bit each day thing, but it would take me so long to get warmed up and into it that it was hardly worth doing a little bit each day. So I finally had to take a couple of days where I did a lot. But you got to figure these things out. And by and large, we do figure these things out. We're relatively attentive to the material disciplines of life. We have to be in order to function in the world. But how attentive are we to spiritual disciplines? Disciplines that are pretty easy to slack on and still look like you're fully functional, and nobody knows. And what even are spiritual disciplines? John Wesley, I always call him the unintentional founder of the Methodist Church. He never meant to found a denomination. He was just a Church of England priest and kind of had a movement within the church that broke off afterwards. He broke up the classical Christian spiritual disciplines into two groups: works of piety and works of mercy. There are 6 works of piety, and I kind of arranged them in my head in a way that's easiest for me to remember from closest in to further out, and in pairs, where one discipline is a little more individual and one is more communal. So for instance, the first pair is fasting and prayer. Fasting, for those of us who ever do it, is often a very individual kind of discipline. Prayer is individual too, but we do it together in groups. So fasting and prayer, Bible study and Christian conference. Bible study you can do on your own. You can get up at the kitchen table like I know many of you do. Some of you know who you are, stare out at the lake as you do your study and you read on your own. But you can also do any amount of study in groups. And it doesn't have to be a Bible study. It could be book study, prayer groups. Christian conference is kind of Christian fellowship. So fasting and prayer, Bible study and Christian conference, or worship, which we do as an individual congregation, and Holy Communion, which whenever we take it, kind of unites us across the world with all other Christians who come to the table at the same time, more or less. These disciplines are inwardly formative. We do them to be changed from within. We do them often to be in closer relationship with God and sometimes those people who are within the church. Works of mercy, on the other hand, are perhaps best understood in the context of Matthew 25. It also gives us 6, by the way. I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you took care of me. I was in prison and you visited me. And these disciplines are outward in nature, oriented toward service. Together, works of piety and mercy develop our relationships both to God and to neighbor. They are spiritual disciplines that, when exercised intentionally, can provide both internal and external transformation. Now, the book of Hebrews, both in the chapter we read today and in its entirety, is very much a book about discipline, though not explicitly about the traditional spiritual disciplines. Oh, they're in there all right. Worship and prayer as works of piety are sprinkled throughout, chapters 4, 5, 10, elsewhere. Exhortation to works of mercy kind of round out the entire book in chapter 13. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers. Remember those who are in prison. Do good and share what you have. But overall, discipline in Hebrews is less about particular practices, as valuable as they are, and as highly as I would commend them, but about infusing our daily walk with discipleship. and maybe not so much a daily walk as a daily run. Oh, heavens. We need Pastor Linda up here to do this one, because I only run when chased. She runs for fun. The author of Hebrews characterizes Jesus as our personal trainer, motivating us to flex our spiritual muscles. Salvation in Hebrews is therapeuo, from which we get therapy. It's physical therapy, restoring us to wellness and strength. Let us lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, right? And let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us. I'm schwitzing just thinking about it. Jesus isn't simply our teacher, he's our coach. The pioneer of our faith is an expression the author of Hebrews uses all the time. Think about that pioneer out in front, walking with his walking stick. He is our example of perseverance, of endurance, of no pain, no gain. Jesus pushes us, drives us to leave behind spiritual atrophy and working with him to get on with the task of perfecting our faith. Now, what does that mean, practically speaking? What might it look like to have a workout in the gym of Jesus? I think one thing it means is taking the trials of life, the temptations, the testing moments, whatever they may be, as opportunities to change and to be changed, to grow inwardly and serve outwardly, to work with God at making meaning out of otherwise meaningless situations. We're often told, as though it's in the Bible, and it's not, oh, there's a reason for everything, as though everything has some kind of inherent meaning. A lot of times that just isn't the case, right? But that doesn't mean that things can't have meaning. I think the best example out of Scripture is the man born blind from John's Gospel. Do you remember that? Beginning of chapter 9, and Jesus and the disciples encounter this man, and the disciples ask that dumb question. So, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he's blind? And I always imagine Jesus doing a face palm. Nobody sinned. There's not a meaningful reason. There's like a scientific reason. They would have no idea of genetics and whatever. There's that kind of reason, but there was no meaningful reason for the man to be blind. He says, but I'm going to take this situation, and you're going to walk alongside me as I do it, and I'm going to make something meaningful of it. We're going to heal him, and in the midst of healing him,
His healing is going to be testimony, not only to himself and to his parents, but to these Pharisees over here who still don't get what I'm talking about. We're going to make something meaningful out of this otherwise meaningless situation. Aren't there plenty of meaningless situations, needless tragedies, that we need to find a way to work with God to try to bring something good, something decent, something hopeful out of them, to bring beauty out of ashes? God never means intentionally for us to suffer. God knows that life is riddled with suffering and wants not only to walk beside us, but to run beside us and to help us along the way, work together with the Lord to make something beautiful out of all these things that are so tragic. To work with the families of children who have been victimized in school shootings. To work with people who are needlessly starving. To accept people who are so needlessly rejected and not welcomed. And in this way, put our disciplines toward love. Almost seems counterintuitive to be thankful. And yet we can be thankful for the work with which we are blessed. That by the Spirit's power we're given the opportunity to, in some small way, make a difference. Like Mick said, there are 1,300 kids in Lake Orion who qualify for free and reduced lunch. And there's no way our little church can feed 1,300. But we can feed 80. We can feed 100. And we can make something beautiful. Amen?
Please sing with me. Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest. Without you, I fall